What's up, basketball fans? Welcome to the Warriors Report. I have a special guest with me. For those who have been on this channel for quite some time, you are familiar with JJ. JJ, how are you doing?
And not too bad. Thanks for having me, my man.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure having you here. For today's video, we're going to be discussing these crazy Og Anunoby rumors. Apparently, it was being reported by NBA Central that the Raptors are taking calls for Og Anunoby. And JJ, we're going to get right into it. What are your initial thoughts on this?
From a personal standpoint, it hurts, man. OG Anunoby for I'd say as soon as Lowry was got off the roster, from a personal standpoint, like OG Anunoby has been my favorite Raptor. So this one hits close to the heart. It hits in the feelings. I'm not gonna lie. But as far as the actual reports and remaining rational and everything like that, um, I get it. Like I understand it. I was just talking about this on one of my last videos that we heard it once in the offseason that he was unhappy with his role, and it was kind of brushed aside there. But then we heard it again, and then we heard it again, and then obviously you had the quotes from OG about when he was asked about this, and on the surface level, at least he kind of said no, but when you're kind of like looking exactly at what he said, it seems like there's truth to that. At least like he doesn't seem like he's content in Toronto right now. So if you have this guy that is on your team, is not happy with his role, and is already kind of like looking elsewhere, especially with his contract situation coming up, not this offseason, but I believe it would be the next one where he has a player option that he can decline to potentially go somewhere else. I understand that if you're the Raptors, you're probably testing the waters of what OG can get you, especially when realistically, I don't think his value has ever been higher than it would be this season, right? Like you're hearing teams throw around three first round picks and then whatever else for OG Anunoby. It feels like that's probably going to be as good of value as you're going to get for OG, because I don't think Toronto's the spot where you're going to be able to showcase him even more in terms of like offensive growth to raise his value. So based on what it is now, based on how good he's been defensively, and based on the seamless fit that I think a lot of teams would look at OG and putting OG on their team, based on that, I can understand why teams are calling. And quite frankly, I can understand why the Raptors would be picking up the phone at this point.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. I was a little bit shocked to hear it. I think, like, obviously, we hear these rumors for quite some time. Like, it's been in the trade rumor mill for like about 10 days now, where we keep hearing teams are interested in OG Anunoby, teams are interested in OG Anunoby. But I was a little bit disappointed, if I'm being honest. Like, you heard Michael Grange ask OG Anunoby. He kind of, to me, honestly, it seemed like he kind of beat around the bush. Like, he was answering a question, but not exactly answering a question. So it really makes you wonder whether or not like OG is actually frustrated. And again, like I said, I don't blame him, man. Like I don't blame him. I know people are gonna go to the comment section and say, "Well, it's Fred's fault." Look, to a certain degree, as a player, you have to be holding yourself accountable as well. Let's be honest. Like OG has been with the Raptors since what 2017 is 2023 now. Like he hasn't really developed an ISO game at all. I know. Look, I know part of that is due to the fact that how the Raptors utilize him on the offensive side. He was pretty much a 3-and-D guy. That's it. It wasn't until a few seasons ago where he was able to handle the ball a little bit more, try a few new things. And obviously the pecking order too, just on the Raptors, seems like a complete mess outside of Pascal Siakam, who we know is usually the number one option. So I wouldn't blame OG Anunoby. I'm a little sad to hear that. Again, as a Raptors fan as well, he's my second favorite player. But I'm sad to hear this. Like OG Anunoby is like the perfect role model player. Like if there's like obviously aside of like superstar players, but if there's a player out there that you really want on your roster that, totally fits team cultures, someone who doesn't have any drama on and off the court, that's OG Anunoby. So I'm a little bit disappointed to hear this as well. But I do want to ask you, do you think the Raptors should shop OG Anunoby more, or maybe look to trade him rather than looking at guys like Fred or Gary Trent Jr.?
Like, should they trade OG over Fred, do you mean?
Yeah, like do you think they should look to trade Gary Trent Jr., Fred VanVleet before they look to trade OG Anunoby?
Gary Trent Jr., no, because I feel like there's at least some mutual interest there in, continuing the partnership, despite the fact that Gary Trent Jr. can opt out of his player option, I believe, this offseason and potentially hit the market, which, quite frankly, I think realistically, what good chance of what's going to happen is he is going to opt out of that player option, but he re-signs with the Raptors. I feel like those two parties are kind of trending in the same direction in terms of they want him here and he wants to be here. Whereas Fred's a little more interesting because I don't think a deal for Fred is off the table. Again, given the lackluster results that you've had this season, a shakeup is coming one way or another. Do I think they should prioritize trading OG over Fred? Quite frankly, I mean, if both of them are gone at this deadline, I wouldn't be surprised. I think, again, OG's value is at its highest. And if you're Toronto, yes, you would love to keep a 24, 25-year old that's an all defense caliber player. But I feel like it's also a little bit of that situation where you strike while the iron is hot. And look, if you're getting the feeling that this guy just does not want to be here moving forward and you're going to lose him for nothing down the line eventually, you're in a pretty good situation where, look, there's a lot of parity around the league. Teams are going to be looking at themselves more so than in a lot of other seasons, thinking, hey, there's a chance we could push for a championship this season. And OG can be that final piece. So there's a good chance that somebody out there, quite frankly, might be willing to overpay for the opportunity to add OG to their roster. And I don't think you want to miss out on that if you're Raptors. I think Fred's kind of in the same boat, but I think as far as trade value goes, OG's is definitely higher. So again, if you're getting a read on the situation that quite frankly neither of those guys are going to be there, past this season or past whatever points, like trade them now. Like there are potentially a lot of buyers out there, and there's not a lot of selling teams this year. Toronto, maybe Chicago. I couldn't really
The
think.
bottom dwellers, the Detroit Pistons, and the Magic as usual. So
Yeah, but yeah, it's going to be a market this trade deadline where I think the sellers are really going to dictate things because there aren't a lot of them. And if Toronto has the opportunity to be a selling team and cash in these chips, it's not a bad year to do it. And again, a lot of people, I'm sure there's going to be people that sit there and be like, oh, what, we're going to trade OG just for a chance to draft somebody that might turn into OG. I mean, like, yeah, sure. In those situations, you always leave yourself to the possibility that, like, yeah, hey, whatever chips you get back, whatever young players you get back, or draft picks you get back might not turn out to be good, or they might turn out to be great, right? Like it's obviously always a guessing game with that kind of stuff, right? So there is a sense of unpredictability, yes, and I understand a lot of people don't like that when they can look at the proven result of what Og Anunoby is and be like, hey, that's a damn good player. I would love him on the team. But if he doesn't want to be there,
true.
like, are you gonna force him to stay and then eventually revisit the situation maybe next year where hell,
It's an
who
expiring
knows?
contract then at that
Yeah,
point, right? So
exactly. He's an expiring contract. You've lost a little bit more leverage if he's still unhappy, right? On top of which, not that I want to wish this upon him by any means, and I want to be clear, I'm definitely not wishing upon him, but he's an injury prone player. What if he gets hurt again? What if it's a major injury and that also tanks his value?
yeah.
Again, like as much as I hate to say it, because I love OG, he's a fantastic player, and he's one that I would have loved to have on this team for like the next decade or so. Maybe not decade, but you get the idea. If he wants out, his value is not going to be better than it is now, unless the team that he ends up on, he somehow turns into like a top 20 player in the league, which probably not going to happen. But
Yeah. He's not gonna be Kawhi Leonard. Let's be honest. I think we're beyond those comparisons now. But I can agree, but I think honestly, I get where you're coming from. Like at some point, you've got to realize that the market right now is a seller's market. Like it's like anyone that's into business, this is the best time to sell on players. And when you look around the league, like you said, there aren't a lot of sellers. But even in terms of like player personnel, usually there's unhappy players. Maybe once in a while you'll get star players or all-star players that are wanting out, and then those are going to be the top guys. But there are reports like outside of Og Anunoby being the most likely trade candidate on the Raptors, obviously a few other guys too, but like even when you're looking around the league, how many players are there that are as good as Og Anunoby that teams are looking to move? So he's that hot player that everyone around the league wants. And again, like you said, it's really hard to trade him, man. Like I hate the idea of trading Og Anunoby, but the market is never going to be higher because, like you said, for the same points you've stated, there are not a lot of sellers. The West is wide open this year. Like, look at how many teams. The separation between like 4 and 5 and like 11th and 12th is crazy. It's like three,
Yeah.
4 games or something like that. So
I think every team outside of, I think it's what, like the last two seeds in the West has a
yeah,
very legitimate chance at the playoffs. And
yeah,
quite frankly, a lot of those teams that are hovering around that play and say, I don't want to, like, just for example, I don't think if you're trading OG that you want to be sending him to the Lakers because I think you can get better returns than that. But
yeah,
like a team like the Lakers that has, been in such turmoil all year, I guarantee you they're still sitting there thinking we have a chance to climb as high as like the 4 seed in the West and give ourselves a
yeah,
legitimate chance come playoff time. So as you're saying, like the West is wide open. Teams need to do something, and like a lot of those teams, sorry, need to do something that will give them that opportunity to
true.
win. And again, there's a good chance somebody might be willing to overpay. And if you get that overpay, then hell, I think if you're Toronto, you're laughing by the end of it because you're bad during a year where the draft class is fantastic. And I believe me, you as somebody that enjoyed doing the draft profile so much, I cannot wait. I cannot wait for the eventual blow up where I can get back to that. But that's far from
Come
the
on,
point.
you're telling me you want the Raptors to blow up so you can make more YouTube videos, JJ? Come on, man.
First of all, yes, that is absolutely what I'm saying. I love making draft profiles. It's some of the most fun I have had as a creator on YouTube. But also just to that point, like again, if you're trading OG, if you're packing it in for the season, congrats. You're packing it in during a year where the draft is absolutely stacked. And obviously outside of Victor, outside of Scoot, like there's so many prospects as you keep going in that lottery that you can talk yourself into putting him into your system and seeing a really damn good player develop that it's a great situation I think for Toronto to be selling. I wish they'd officially make that call already because I'm so tired of just like sitting here and waiting for it to finally come. But yeah, I think whether it be OG in this case, whether it even be Fred past that, if you have an opportunity to sell at a really high price and you're Toronto, you're taking that.
All right, but with that being said, after saying all of that, JG, I'm actually gonna say, you know what? The Raptors should try everything in their power to make OG Anunoby happy. Like, I know this is going to sound absolutely insane. If a team's offering you 3 first-round picks, it depends on which team as well, right? Like, if it's a
Yeah,
really good team, like let's say the Denver Nuggets, for example, they're not going anywhere for the next 4 or 5 years. So those picks are going to be likely in the 25, 24, 23rd at the very best, even if they have a bad season. So again, I just don't. I know a lot of people are quick to say that, we'll get a good return, and they're not wrong. Like you guys, everyone, including you, JJ, you're not wrong when you see the net return we'll get for OG Anunoby is absolutely insane and it'll never be higher. But I think you try to move on from Gary and Fred. Like those skill sets can be replaced. OG Anunoby has a very rare skill set that is super hard to find. Like you've been watching the Raptors for quite some time. You remember when the Raptors were literally trying to fit in different guys into that three position? Like we tried Terrence Ross, we tried Damari Carroll. It's such a difficult position to fill. Like that was that was
oh
that
my
was the
god.
biggest failure ever. Like what? He was getting
Uh,
paid $50 million, and I remember everyone was mad because he was the highest paid Raptor at one point. Like,
the LeBron stopper.
yeah, yeah. So I don't know. I
oh,
know like I get where people are coming from, and maybe that's why the Raptors, if they do look to trade OG Anunoby, that is why they're asking for two good young prospects rather than draft capital because draft capital is never guaranteed. Like you look at
yeah.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but you go back and look at like draft most drafts in the last 4 or 5 years, and you look at drafts from even 18th spot to the 30th spot. Very rarely are those players going to be good as OG Anunoby. So again, that's the only thing. If you are acquiring some really good young assets, then it makes sense for me. But I'm personally trying to move Gary and Fred way before I tried to move OG. I think he's part of the core for me.
I do hear you. My only thing with just that talk in general is between those three guys, right? Like the problem, I can understand where the frustration of the role comes from, right? Because right now you have obviously Pascal Siakam at the top of your pecking order, and I would probably say Fred Van Vliet right after it. And then
Yep.
you have OG, Gary,
And Scotty.
Scotty, and hell, I'll even throw it into the mix too. Even Precious, all trying to get their
Yeah.
and developmental touches. And quite frankly, obviously, they're all getting in each other's way as a result. And you get the mess that is the Raptors offense this year, on top of a lot of stuff and like intricacies that's obviously going to take a really long time to get into. Um, Obviously, clearing the way of somebody like Fred or Gary, like I understand. like that it would help the problem a little bit. But at the end of the day, like here's the other caveat that I want to throw. Well, a couple things. So number one is I understand OG's defensive impact, probably quite frankly, better than most, respectfully. I think that kind of caliber player is very hard to find. However, for all the publicity that OG's defense gets, finally, by the way, and
Yeah.
very, very deservedly so, I think the one player on the Raptors radar that's really, sorry, on the Raptors that's really slipping under the radar in terms of his defensive impact is somebody like Precious Achua. I think Precious Achua has shown so much on the defensive side of basketball. Like his advanced numbers look elite, just straight up. I would love to see Precious Achua get a permanent chance with the starters to really hone in on that and to really, quite frankly, be the anchor for the defense that I genuinely think Precious can be. So if you're moving OG out of the way and you're worried about losing the defensive impact, understandable. But I do think there is a player kind of, you know, waiting in the wings that is going to give you not the exact same, obviously, defensive impact in terms of just being the elite wing defender that OG is and the incredibly switchable defender that OG is, but that a guy that's still going to be able to anchor your defense probably for the foreseeable future. The second point there being when it comes to trying to make OG happy and get rid of Gary, get rid of Fred beforehand. Fred, I will Fred, I will agree with you that if you can get rid of Fred before OG and make OG happy, I can understand that given Fred's age. With Gary, I don't know about that one personally. Again, like obviously OG has such a high, I mean, not has such a higher ceiling. He's already so much more of an impactful defender. But OG's impact on defense can't be overstated. But I, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't believe OG has near the offensive ceiling that Gary probably has, given the right circumstances moving forward. So you can at least combat that conversation there. But Fred, I will absolutely give you in that. Although
Yeah.
that's a different conversation.
Yeah, I also think Fred brings a lot to the Raptors too. Like I know a lot of people have been hating on him for not being a good passer. He's actually a capable passer. I just think he's a shoot first point guard, which is why you see him shoot way more than he'll look to pass. But again, that OG Anunoby, Gary Trent Jr. definitely could be debated as well offensively. I think Arsenal wise, OG has the potential. I don't think he's reached his ceiling yet in terms of being the better overall scorer than Gary Trent Jr. I don't think again, you could argue too, like shooter wise, I know Gary Trent Jr. is a really good shooter, but he's also very streaky as well. But again, that's a topic for another day. I do want to cover a few points now because there was someone by the name of, I forget who it was. He was an Arizona radio host that apparently was reporting that the reason the Raptors want to get rid of OG is because of his contract. And honestly, I don't know, man. Like we just played the Phoenix Suns. This guy is all the way in Arizona. He's a radio host, and you're telling me he has information that Adrian Wojnarowski doesn't. He has information that Shams doesn't. So again, apparently, according to him, that's the reason why the Raptors want to get rid of him. But I don't know. I don't know what to believe. And Josh Lewinberg was also reporting just because they're taking calls doesn't necessarily mean they're moving players. So take that as you will. Again, it'd be heartbreaking to see OG Anunoby go because this fan base has been so high on him, and just given how he's coming to this league and how much he's developed overall and his defensive impact as well. But again, very interested to hear your thoughts, JJ. This was a really fun discussion. Obviously, realistically, we could probably go for another 20, 30 minutes because this discussion is such a deep, you can go so deep into this discussion, but it's always a pleasure having you on here again. It was so much fun doing this discussion. Thank you for being here. And if you guys are watching, guys, make sure to head over to JJ's channel. Make sure to subscribe to his channel. He posts some awesome Raptors content as well. So head over to his channel. If you haven't subscribed to mine, that'd be awesome as well. And JJ, any last words before we head out here?
Any last words?
Don't trade OG.
Blow it up. I want Scoot Henderson on this team.
Thank you guys for watching today's.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I hope you guys know what I mean when I say blow it up. Soft reset.
JJ, thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure having you on, and that will be it, guys. So again, make sure to leave your comments down below. And as always, guys, I appreciate you guys watching, and I hope you guys have yourselves a great day.